Hello everybody, welcome to the 4th episode of Former Greats with me, Connor, as your host. This episode we will be discussing the history of Hasbro Interactive. Hasbro Interactive was a video game production and publishing subsidiary of Hasbro from 1995 until 2001. It developed and produced many video games that were based off of Hasbro's well-known board game brands, such as Monopoly, Candyland, and Clue. In order to fully understand the history of Hasbro Interactive, we have to go all the way back to the early 1980s when the Milton Bradley Company first took a shot at the interactive games market. In 1982, a technology company named General Consumer Electronics started distributing a video game console developed by Western Technologies and Smith Engineering. This video game console was called the Vectrex. Many believe the Vectrex was superior to the Atari due to the system being the first home-based system to use a vector-based screen and to offer a 3D peripheral. The Milton Bradley Company took great interest in the Vectrex video game console, and after seeing potential in the system, purchased General Consumer Electronics. This gave the Milton Bradley Company the rights to distribute the console. Vectrex was originally sold at a retail price of $199, which is $480 in 2017, but when the Milton Bradley Company purchased GCE, the price dropped to $150. However, the timing on the Vectrex was absolutely horrible. The console was released 1 year before the video game crash of 1983, a worldwide recession in the video game industry that occurred from 1983 to 1985. This recession caused a huge drop in revenue in the video game industry, having total revenue peak at around $3.2 billion in 1983 to about $100 million by 1985. This caused the Vectrex to suffer tremendously. Not only was the price tag for the console high, but the game library for the console was very small compared to other industry giants out there such as Atari. Therefore, Milton Bradley took a huge blow in profitability, and the company had to find someone to acquire them before they went bankrupt. They went to a few companies and were successful in enticing traditional game giant Hasbro to purchase them. At the time, Hasbro was already starting to get itself into the interactive games market. Hasbro's process for creating interactive games would be by basing the interactive game off of one of their many already established traditional game brands. This is the way Hasbro created video games for the next 10 years.
Making things with light bright makes them glow so bright. A steamboat, a chicken, and tropical fish, a lemonade sign, or whatever I wish.
And with light bright refills, you can make
Potato Head Kids, Transformers that glow, My Little Pony, and others you know. Wow, there's G.I. Joe.
Light Bright, light bulb not included, from Hasbro.
In the early 1990s, Hasbro started an ambitious project. They wanted to create a virtual reality system that would create the sensation of moving in a 3D world. Hasbro executives believed the project had great potential and a huge payoff if successful. One of the main parts of the project was to develop a state-of-the-art microprocessor, a circuit that contains all the functions of a central processing unit for a computer. After several years into development, the project was cancelled. Hasbro concluded that a microprocessor with that much power would not be possible to be produced cheaply enough at the time. This failed venture led to Hasbro favoring the CD-ROM based games for personal computers and created a division called Hasbro Interactive for development of these games in 1995. During the creation of Hasbro Interactive, Alan Hassenfeld, chief executive of Hasbro at the time, picked Tom Dusenberry to start up and lead Hasbro Interactive. Dusenberry previously worked at Parker Brothers, a company Hasbro acquired in 1991 before being assigned to lead Hasbro Interactive. He saw potential in interactive games and believed they had a big future. He hired people from Hasbro and a few outsiders to get Hasbro Interactive off the ground. Dusenberry made most of the decisions for Hasbro Interactive, including product selection, partner agreements, and organizational structure of the company. In order for Hasbro Interactive to make games off of Hasbro's toys, they had to pay a licensing fee. Hasbro Interactive quickly made a profit in 1995, mostly due to the release of their video game versions of Monopoly and Mr. Potato Head. Hasbro Interactive then continued to make profit in 1996 due to more releases of video game products based off of Hasbro's well-known brands. Overall, the potential of Hasbro Interactive seemed to grow by the month, continuing to rake in more profit with each video game release. 1997 marked one of the biggest growths for Hasbro Interactive. Revenues more than doubled, new employees were brought in, and two of Hasbro Interactive's games that year were in the industry's top 10 list. Duesenberry, on the other hand, was scouring the landscape to see which video game companies he could acquire and what licenses he could purchase to further expand Hasbro Interactive. So, in 1998, Hasbro Interactive secured licensing to produce games based on the TV shows Jeopardy and The Wheel of Fortune. Hasbro Interactive also purchased rights to all Atari games and hoped to bring them to the current consoles at the time and renew interest in all the classics. The company also announced that it was going to make its own game from scratch, a game not based off of a successful Hasbro property. Hasbro Interactive also acquired two companies, Microprose for $70 million and Avalon Hill for $6 million, in order to expand their line of video game titles. Duesenberry commented on the acquisitions, stating that this was only the beginning of what he had planned for Hasbro Interactive. In early 1999, word was spreading that Hasbro Interactive would reach over $1 billion in revenue in as little as 3 years with the current growth. Although this goal was only a rumor, it caused Hasbro Interactive employees to have great ambition and work harder. This caused Duesenberry and other employees to gather new ideas. They signed agreements with outside developers, hired new employees, and added new gaming platforms to host their games on. For example, Hasbro Interactive licensed 11 games from Namco and created a sports division to utilize their new licensing deal with Formula One. They also purchased Europress to start developing educational games. Duesenberry also dreamed of acquiring Electronic Arts, which would make Hasbro Interactive one of the largest video game developers at the time. Though throughout 1999, Hasbro heads were starting to worry about Hasbro Interactive. At first, Duesenberry reported a large product return from the 1998 holiday season, causing people to start losing hope in Hasbro Interactive's goal to reach $1 billion in revenue in 3 years. Then, Hasbro Interactive started a monopoly promotion with Burger King. That would have been alright, if Hasbro Interactive's parent company Hasbro wasn't currently having another monopoly promotion with Burger King's competitor McDonald's. Hasbro Interactive also made revisions to its financial projections. This was due to the high product return from 1998 and prices dropping in the interactive games industry as competition stiffened. Developers of Hasbro Interactive also started to miss deadlines on new products, citing that gaming systems were becoming too complex to be able to complete a new game in a few months. Due to all of this, Hasbro heads started watching Hasbro Interactive's business moves a little more carefully. One of these heads were Al Verrecchio, who stated that Hasbro Interactive's CFO was too busy acquiring licenses and companies that he couldn't overlook his company's financial situation. Because of this, Jackie Deo was hired as the new CFO of Hasbro Interactive. After the first couple of days at Hasbro Interactive, Deo reported that the division was going to fall short of expectations for the year. She brought in new financial systems to make estimates for the year to be more exact. This ended up causing chaos, as for Hasbro had recently switched to a new financial system, and there were delays in transferring information at Hasbro Interactive from paper to the new system. Employees at Hasbro Interactive did not welcome this new system. They didn't like anything that they believed would harm their creativity. This caused employees to start losing confidence in corporate leadership. Nonetheless, Deo prepared Hasbro Interactive for the 2000 planning cycle and set the revenue prediction at $400 million for the year. A few months later, in 2000, Hasbro Interactive ended their fiscal year and reported that they lost $74 million on $237 million in revenue. This didn't look good on Duesenberry's part, and Hasbro Interactive started losing support from other Hasbro divisions. While this was happening, Hasbro was working on a new project to get games on the internet. It had a simple and easy name to remember, Games.com. To operate the site, Hasbro constructed a new $100 million game studio in Silicon Valley, though Hasbro immediately had issues regarding staff. Due to the competitiveness of the interactive games industry, Hasbro had a hard time hiring talented developers without offering expensive benefits packages. This didn't stop other Hasbro managers from leaving to go to big online retailers such as eBay. Due to this, Hasbro delayed Games.com until 2001. In 2000, Hasbro Interactive was still struggling. Even with an industry bestseller on the market at the time, product returns were still high, and the development teams were still missing deadlines. 2000 also proved a difficult year for other Hasbro divisions, including Hasbro itself. Several big product lines were selling short, and Hasbro stock dropped $26 from 1999 to 2000. After a few months, Duesenberry came out and said he was leaving Hasbro. Surprisingly, the Duesenberry was convinced to stay and was promised that the Games.com project would be put under his control. By this point, Hasbro Interactive was just a mess and was too far beyond repair. Hasbro heads decided to sell Hasbro Interactive, and Duesenberry agreed. By the end of the year, Hasbro Interactive and Games.com was sold to Infogrames for $100 million. This deal included all of Hasbro Interactive's licenses and properties, and Infogrames gained the right to develop games based on Hasbro properties for 15 years, and an additional 5 years if the products made sold well. Hasbro Interactive was then renamed Infogrames Interactive, and by February 2001, Infogrames laid off 40 employees working at Hasbro Interactive. By May of 2003, Infogrames Interactive was then renamed Atari Interactive, and any trace besides licenses of Hasbro Interactive were swept away. What went wrong? Well, in short, Hasbro Interactive lost focus of its product line and just got too ambitious. Executives were too caught up in acquiring new licenses and setting insane goals that the company lost focus as a whole. Therefore, the company suffered heavy losses and had to be sold, so Hasbro could try and make up some of Hasbro Interactive's losses. That's going to do it for this episode, guys. Before we leave, I want to let you know that Owlhole Productions now has a Twitter. We go under the name @OwlholeProds, and we post when new videos are coming up on the channel, along with other developments. We also post upcoming videos for the Game Lounge, a channel that I am working on with my friend Troy. So go check us out. As you know, I'm Connor, and I hope to see you in the next episode.
If you've had one of those topsy-turvy days, relax and have a Budweiser.
Thank you.